Did giants really walk the earth? That single question is enough to unravel everything you thought you knew about the Bible, ancient history, and the very nature of mankind. It sounds like the beginning of a myth, one of those old stories people politely ignore in Sunday school. But it isn't. It's a question born directly from the sacred pages of Genesis, and once asked, it refuses to let go. The book of Genesis doesn't waste time. Within the first few chapters, we're introduced to a cryptic verse, Genesis 6 verse 4. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Giants, sons of God, daughters of men, renowned warriors. It sounds like a lost chapter from a fantasy novel, yet this verse is part of the very foundation of Christian scripture. And yet, almost no one talks about it. Why? Because the Nephilim, those mysterious giants mentioned in Genesis, raise questions most people are not ready to answer. Who were they really? Were they merely tall humans? Were they something else, something not fully human? Could it be possible that heaven and earth collided in the earliest days of man, producing offspring that were neither divine nor mortal, but something in between? And perhaps the most terrifying question of all, what if they're not gone? The Nephilim are one of the Bible's greatest enigmas. Just one verse, buried between stories of moral decay and impending judgment, has launched thousands of years of debate, speculation, and silence. Some theologians dismiss it. Others dare not touch it. A few explore it, and are never quite the same afterward. To understand the Nephilim, we must go back, not just to the days before Noah, but to a world that was darker, stranger, and far more dangerous than we're often told. A world where divine beings walked among men, and boundaries, biological, spiritual, and moral, were crossed. This first part of our journey will take us into that world. We'll examine the verse itself, explore ancient interpretations, and ask, what did early Jews and Christians believe about the Nephilim? Were they fallen angels? Were they the children of Seth? Or were they something older, deeper, and more terrifying? Let us begin where the silence begins. Let us step into the shadow of Genesis 6 and dare to look closer. The Nephilim were not just giants. They were the offspring of a cosmic rebellion. This is not a poetic exaggeration or a fringe theory. It's the claim made by some of the most ancient religious texts, early church fathers, and Jewish traditions passed down for centuries. What if the greatest secret hidden in Genesis is not simply that giants existed, but how they came into being? Genesis 6 verses 1 to 2 says, "When men began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose." This short passage has been one of the most hotly debated in all of Scripture. Who are these sons of God? Why did they take human women as wives? And how did their union produce the beings known as Nephilim? To understand what really happened, we have to go beyond Genesis alone. We need to explore ancient texts such as the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and writings from early Jewish and Christian thinkers. These sources, though not part of the modern biblical canon, provide an expanded and often chilling picture of the events that led to the flood. According to the Book of Enoch, 200 divine beings, referred to as Watchers, descended to earth on Mount Hermon. They made a pact to defy God's order and take human women for themselves. Their names are listed. Their leader was called Sanjaza. And their offspring? Giant hybrids with insatiable hunger, enormous strength, and corrupting influence, what we know as the Nephilim. The story doesn't stop there. These Nephilim weren't just physical threats, they were spiritual ones. They taught humanity sorcery, bloodshed, vanity, weapon-making, enchantments, and forbidden knowledge. According to these texts, the Nephilim corrupted the world so deeply that God had no choice but to wipe it clean with a flood. Could this be why Genesis 6 verse 5 says, "Every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time"? The moral decay was not just human, it was the result of something unnatural. What's more disturbing is what comes after the flood. The Nephilim were supposedly destroyed. But Numbers 13:33, written centuries later, records a shocking discovery by the Israelite spies. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. The giants, Nephilim, were still there. This suggests something terrifying, that the genetic legacy of the Nephilim may have survived, either by surviving the flood through unknown means, or by a second incursion, another union between spiritual beings and humans. Throughout Scripture, the presence of giants and warrior tribes with strange origins, like the Rephaim, Anakim, and Emim, hint at a persistent shadow, a bloodline that refuses to vanish. What if the story of the Nephilim isn't over? It's easy to view the Bible as a closed narrative, a collection of ancient stories sealed in the past. But what if some parts were never meant to stay in the past? What if certain truths were not only historical, but cyclical? What if the Nephilim weren't merely a relic of Genesis, but a shadow that continues to stretch across the corridors of time, into our present, and perhaps even our future? The ancient world trembled under the weight of these hybrid beings. Their strength, their hunger, and their corruption pushed humanity to the brink. God sent the flood, not just to cleanse mankind, but to wipe away the unnatural stain the watchers left behind. And yet, traces of them remained. The Bible itself acknowledges their post-flood presence, the Anakim, Rephaim, and other descendants that terrified even the mighty warriors of Israel. But beyond Scripture, what about the world around us today? Could echoes of the Nephilim still haunt our reality? This final part of our journey dives into the controversial and often hidden connections between ancient biblical accounts and modern phenomena. We'll explore historical records, archaeological mysteries, and genetic anomalies. We'll look at ancient myths from around the world that strangely resemble the Nephilim narrative, from the Greek Titans to the Sumerian Apkallu, to Native American legends of sky beings who took women from the earth. Are these merely stories, or fractured memories of a shared global trauma? As we sift through these traces, we will also examine modern-day reports, unexplained skeletons found within human proportions, ancient structures so massive and precise they defy primitive technology, and the curious rise of genetic experimentation and artificial intelligence. Could it be that what happened in Genesis 6 is not just history, but a pattern? A warning? In this final chapter, we won't just ask what the Nephilim were. We'll ask what they still might be, and what that means for the world we live in today.